You have more than half of the current retirees out there right now that for them, Social Security is their primary income. That's about all they have coming in. So what can you do to help people when so many people are worried about how they're going to eat, how they're going to pay their mortgage, those kind of things? How can you help them start to prepare for the future and to save for retirement?
Well, the most important thing is to maintain their income. And their income, you know, for last 2 years or so, they have not gotten any cost of living increases, although prices were going up. So they're getting less money. This year they're getting a little bit of boost. But my program of emphasizing the monetary policy shows that would indicate inflation would end. You don't have inflation when you print a lot of money. Print a lot of money, the value of the dollar goes down and cost goes up. So people on fixed incomes receiving Social Security, their income automatically goes down. They suffer the most. So you have to stop the inflation. But over the years, what I've done to try to prevent this from happening was I had a bill that would always have prevented any of the Social Security funds from being spent, and they would have been saved. They would have had a true trust fund. That's not the case. We've taken Social Security money, spent it on a lot of this overseas activity, which I don't like, and so the trust fund isn't there. So it isn't solvent. So I think the only way we can protect, because I am for slashing, you know, spending, and I talked about $1 trillion. But what I want to have priorities, and one would be those elderly that are dependent on their Social Security or medical benefits or child health care. And I believe that if you cut some of these departments, Department of Education and Energy and all this wars that we don't need, there would be enough money and stop the inflation to take care of the elderly. So, but it means that we have to change people's attitude, because a lot of people think that we have this obligation to be in 150 countries and 900 bases, and that these wars are so necessary, except for one thing now. People's attitudes are shifting on that. They're sort of coming over to my side of that argument and say, this war in Afghanistan has been going on too long. We should spend that money here at home. And you just, you know, stop spending that money, then that money becomes available to take care of these problems that we think are more important.
How do you both protect Social Security for those who are already in the system and are drawing from it right now, and then thinking more long term, how do you protect it for the young people who hope to be in it one day?
Well, some of them don't want to be in it, and I'm offering them a chance to get out. Under 25, if they think that they don't want to depend on what's happening, I'd let them get out. And even my program deals with that, because the first reaction would be, oh, that's what they have to take care of us. The young have to pay so the elderly can take it, because we went and wasted all their money. The only way you can do it, my system wouldn't work if we didn't change our foreign policy, quit fighting these wars, cut back on all these departments that we don't need. We could do it. But people should have a right to be out of a system. We argue, conservative Republicans are always arguing for opting out of Obamacare. So why can't we opt out of the system? And young people, agree with this overwhelmingly. But if we don't do anything, let's say we continue to do what we're doing because there's no serious proposals to cut spending and curtail what's happening, everybody loses, because the inflation rate is going to be so high that the elderly will get their checks. And as they've already seen, those checks have been eroded. They'll erode much more severely. So this is the reason why we have to have dramatic changes in the way we spend money in Washington.
With your ideas, then, you're talking about 25 and under. So then does that then get rid of the talk about, do we need to start looking at raising the retirement age? Is that another factor, or does that not even become necessary?
Well, I haven't needed to calculate that in. If they cut all the spending, now let's say they won't cut as much as I want. You'd be forced to, because there wouldn't be any money there to do it. But if you cut the money from the programs, I say you do not have to cut or change the retirement age. I have not proposed that.
What about dependent on how much money a person makes? Some have talked about, if you're really wealthy, maybe you don't need any of that you paid into it.
No, I think that, you know, in a way this was assumed, at least at the beginning and over the years, it was assumed to be a contract, but the government's already broken the contract because they've spent the money. So I think we should work hard to try to renew the contract, and if somebody happens to be more successful for another, I don't think they should be penalized. So I haven't worked on saying, well, if you're higher income, you're not going to get benefits. Then it truly becomes a welfare thing. I mean, it shifts from a program where there was supposed to be a trust fund to a welfare program, because you're just transferring around and cancel out to people who don't need it. So that would be throwing in the towel. Something like that will happen if we don't do what I'm suggesting and put integrity back into the trust fund.
Let's talk about Medicare. Another thing that people talk about may need some solid reforms here as we move ahead. So how do you again do kind of looking at this from both a two-pronged, you know, you're looking both now and later, but then we also have that wild card, which is so huge here, and that's the rising cost of health care. So how does that play into everything to make sure that people get what they're entitled to?
Well, you have to understand why the rising cost of health care is there. Once again, the same reason housing prices went up, same reason educational costs go up. When there's a creation of a lot of new money, we don't know where it's going to go, but Congress sends it in different directions. Where they send it, that's where the prices go up. So there's been a lot of educational program, housing program, and medical programs. So the quality of education hasn't gone up. Technology hasn't lowered the cost of medical care like it lowers the cost of all other industries, because there's too much money going in. So you have to stop the inflation. You have to stop this, and you have to also allow more competition in the medical system. Today, the corporations really run the show. The drug companies, the insurance companies, they're involved in all the reforms. So if it's prescription drugs, you know, the insurance companies and drug companies like those kind of things, and they actually end up having a lot to say about even in Obamacare. So it isn't socialized medicine as much. It's a privilege for corporations to make even more money. So what are the insurance companies doing right now? They're raising their fees. Another reason the costs are higher for the litigation, the lawsuits that are going on, and I've worked on that, and I have proposals how the market can help this, allowing doctors and patients to have agreements on how to settle disputes, and sort of it's really nasty because we'd put the attorneys out of business when they want to keep lawsuits. You would agree where the fund is and what you would do and how it would be settled, and those insurance program you know, could protect anybody being injured. When we have car accidents, we don't all go to court. It's almost never you go to court. Insurance companies take care of it. So you could work that out in medicine. But today it's illegal for a doctor to do that. And I would like to legalize that, where doctors and the patients can work something out and say, hey, look, let's have an agreement on I deliver babies. Anything happens to the baby, we're going to fight over it. You trust me, I'll do my best. If it happens, the insurance is going to be there. So it could work. But right now, we have all this litigation. I talked to somebody the other day, they had a pulled muscle, it turned out to be, and cost them $11,000 in the emergency room. Half of it is because they need the money and they charge too much, but the other half is, what if you don't do the MRI? What if you get a bump on the head and you miss it? You know the attorneys are going to kill you. So you way over order. And now, I practiced medicine before we had government involved. We always charged the least. And people who didn't have money, they didn't pay. I mean, it was just so different. Now, everybody is charged the maximum, and everybody gets every test, and everybody is struggling. The hospitals need more money, and for instance, we have these mandates on all the hospitals. Illegal immigrants get free medical care. You know, in the old days, churches did this, but now it's when the government does it that helps push the costs up. So that whole thing would have to have a new approach.
Congressman Paul, you have said that medical malpractice awards are creating a crisis in the medical industry, driving doctors out of the business. We also know the CBO has projected that tort reform could save the federal government $54 billion over 10 years. So why are you against federal tort reform?
because the federal government shouldn't be involved. It's a state matter. Tort law is a state matter. And it's a tough vote for me because as a physician, I know doctors are on the receiving end, and it does push up, the cost of medicine. But if you look carefully at all my legislation, I have offered a free market alternative to this, to allow the doctors to negotiate, to make contracts, get them out from under the monopoly control laws, give tax deductions for insurance policy where there's no fault insurance. And there is a way in the private market today. We can't contract with our patients for a third-party third-party settlement, and that takes it out of the market, turns it over to the attorneys. If they accept my position on this, a free market approach, and not a nationalized tort law control of this, believe me, we'd put all the trial lawyers out of business, and they wouldn't get most of the money that comes from all these lawsuits when they're suing doctors.
Thank you, Congressman.
One of the things that you propose, and there's been some controversy about, is to begin to phase out, as you explain it, federal student loans to folks who want to go to college, federally backed student loans, that you want to phase out over time. At some point then, you would have people who really don't qualify for private loans, who couldn't walk into a bank and say, my son needs to go to college and I need a loan. They simply won't qualify. Are there just some people who won't be able to go to college that want to in a Paul administration?
No, I don't think so. Anybody who's ambitious enough will get to go to college. The problem is college costs too much. And with the good intentions of giving people houses at discount, it ends up with a housing bubble, and the people who are supposed to be helped, they lose their house. Same way with education. The attempt to help people in education, all you do is you don't get better education. You end up actually pushing the price of education up. So we've delivered now hundreds of thousands of students graduating with $1 trillion worth of debt and no jobs. So it's a totally failed policy. Only a generation ago, we didn't have government programs, and people worked their way through college, and I was able to get through medical school and college, but it wasn't so expensive. So it's the inflation, the problems of the government. As soon as the government gets involved for good intentions, there's always unintended consequences, and almost inevitably it backfires. And besides, let's say it did sort of work, and it does work for some people. Some people get an education at the expense of others. But why should people who are laborers who never get to go to college, why should they be taxed to send some of us through college? So it's not even a fair system when it works. But obviously it doesn't work, and that's why it's coming to an end. And now they have to talk about, well, what are we're going to have to bail out everybody, bail out the housings, and now bail out the student loans. But that's not the answer. The answer is looking toward the cause, and the cause is spending, debt, printing money, inflation, too much government, loss of confidence in the free market, loss of confidence in liberty is what it is. And where the responsibility is. Responsibility is on the individual and the family to take care of their needs, not the federal bureaucracy. It just doesn't work.
You say that the federal government should stay out of people's personal habits. You say marijuana, cocaine, even heroin should be legal if states want to permit it. You feel the same about prostitution and gay marriage. Question, sir, why should social conservatives in South Carolina vote for you for president?
Well, they will if they understand my defense of liberty is the defense of their right to practice their religion and say their prayers where they want and practice their life. But if you do not protect liberty across the board, it's a First Amendment type issue. We don't have a First Amendment so that we can talk about the weather. We have the First Amendment so we can say very controversial things. So for people to say that, yes, we have our religious beliefs protected, but people who want to follow something else or a controversial religion, you can't do this. If you have the inconsistency, then you're really not defending liberty. But there are strict rules on freedom of choice of this sort, because you can't hurt other people, you can't defame other people. But yes, you have a right to do things that are very controversial. If not, you're going to end up with government that's going to tell us what we can eat and drink and whatever. You know, it's amazing that we want freedom to pick the future, you know, our future in a spiritual way, but not when it comes to our personal habits.
But Senator, are you suggesting that heroin and prostitution are an exercise of liberty?
Well, you know, I probably never used those words. You put those words someplace. But, yes, in essence, if I leave it to the states, it's going to be up to the states. Up until this past century, you know, for over 100 years they were legal. What you're inferring is, you know what? If we legalized heroin tomorrow, everybody's going to use heroin. How many people here would use heroin if it was legal? I bet nobody would put the hand, oh, yeah, I need the government to take care of me. I don't want to use heroin, so I need these laws.